I've got Michelle Thomason with us today. I used to go to church with Michelle, and those were 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Right.
But I know you as a mom, a mentor. I think you used to do some exercise heat something back then in the
Yeah,
gym.
I started teaching again. It's exciting.
And but we have you on here today because you're someone that lives intentionally, and I know you've got this breaking chains financial thing you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So could you tell us more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot to Michelle. I try to live intentionally. So thanks for having me on. That's something I try to live by. You should really strive to be your best.
Mm-hmm.
Be your best you is kind of my motto in all areas of your life. But my husband and I do own a financial brokerage. It's Breaking Chains Enterprises. And so we help people break chains financially, but also we have a mentor role with our agents and help them break mental and spiritual chains a lot of times through that mentorship.
But you start with finances.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, there's all kinds of things that, finances can really handicap us and cripple us.
Right.
So if we can get that in order, a lot of times it frees us up spiritually, mentally. Talk to us about the financial part.
Okay.
Talk about how people are just in bondage or
right.
Share a couple stories without sharing names maybe of.
Okay. Yeah. So we're very education focused because really the school systems don't teach us about money. And so it allows us to really sit down with families and start from the basics. Like, how does money work? How do you make your dollar go the furthest and not constantly in a debt cycle? Because credit cards come with a lot of high interest rate, and most families that are dependent on credit cards end up in this debt cycle that they never, ever get out of. And so it does create a bondage. It does create those chains.
What's the national average on credit debt right now? Do you know? Credit card debt?
Over $1 trillion in credit card debt, Americans.
What about per household?
I don't know that statistic right offhand, but
isn't it like $30K?
I would say probably it's probably close.
Okay. Yeah.
But that does end up crippling a lot of families, and especially when you talk about being intentional with your life and maybe using your life as a ministry. A lot of times money holds us back in those aspects too, and we're not able to help people like we want to, because if we can't afford our own lives, there's no way we're going to be able to pass that along to somebody else and help somebody else in their time of need. So,
do you remember when, I think Obama did it on credit card statements, when they added, if you pay the minimum amount, it's this long. If you pay extra, it's this long. Do you remember when that got added? I remember, and I remember being like, ooh.
Yeah,
and
it's really eye-opening.
We've always tried to pay them off every month because we'll use them.
Yeah. There are good ways to use credit cards, but you've got to be disciplined.
You've got to be disciplined. Mm-hmm. But I remember seeing that, and I believe Obama did that as a way of educating, helping people understand what 20% or 30% interest looks like on even $1,000 or $10,000. Like, it's bondage,
right?
To your guys' point.
So one thing that's super eye-opening that we'll do is we'll do a debt stacking program and help people get out of debt faster. And let's say, for example, somebody's paying $500 a month towards their debt. Once they're out of that debt, if they invest that same $500 at 9-12% interest rate, and what that will turn into in 30, 40 years is super eye-opening to people when they can turn that money around and actually make it grow instead of paying it to somebody else.
Instead of it being gone.
Yep.
What do you guys have? Do you guys have a term for that?
It's called debt stacking.
Debt stacking.
Yep. So I will tell you the most dramatic debt stack I ever did. So I sat down with a guy. It basically told him he was going to be in debt for 138 years, basically indefinitely, because he was 38 years old. He would never, ever get out of it by paying the minimum payments that he was doing.
How much debt did he have?
I cannot remember that off the top of my head. It was under 100,000.
Okay.
Because I do remember clearly that by debt stacking it, he would get out of debt in 3.5 years.
Wow.
And avoid $120,000 in interest.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was super eye-opening. I was like, please follow this plan. So.
And he did, I bet.
Yes.
I mean, at that point, you want to help him do it.
Right. Just want to see that come to fruition. Yeah.
So you guys take debt,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll encourage them to be more aggressive about paying it off, right?
So what it does is you actually start stacking, depending on the balance on that debt and what the interest rate is. It'll tell you what to pay first.
Okay.
So keep paying your minimum payments, but let's target the first one until it's totally paid off.
Do you go the smallest amount first?
It's not always that way because
Okay.
it's dependent on your interest rate too.
Okay.
The computer does all that. It's real cool. So take that payment that you would have paid on that first debt. It's already paid off. Now apply that to the second debt, so it pays it off that much quicker. Then you'll keep stacking it until it's gone.
So the mistake some people make is they just pay one off, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they either go re-leverage it or
they just use that money and say,
money.
hey, I have $25 in my budget. Let's go to Starbucks once. Right? Instead of, putting that money back into it.
So what kind of things do you ever help people try to find more money in their budget? Maybe they have subscriptions.
I have done sometimes a deep dive with somebody and really look at where their money's going, because some people, they'll say, well, I have X amount of dollars coming in and I have X amount of dollars going out. There's a huge gap here and I don't know where the rest of this money is going. And so I have taken a deep dive with some people and just to see where their money's going, where they could cut costs. There's lots of ways to cut costs.
A couple of years ago, I sat down and I wrote down from memory everything I subscribed to.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked up, and obviously there was a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
But it was powerful for me to put subscriptions on paper, even if it's Microsoft Word or
right.
Netflix or whatever. There's so many things we subscribe to that we never use, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or we could do without. And obviously those businesses know that their valuation's based on people subscribing to them.
Right.
But it was powerful. So that was like an intentional thing I did, was sit down and actually put on paper how much am I paying a year and stuff I maybe don't use.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys help people. You maybe do a deep dive. Otherwise, you just teach them to stack the debt. And you guys, the algorithm's based on interest rates.
The minimum payment, the total payment due, and the interest rate. Yeah. So it'll show them how to get out of debt the quickest, save the most time, and avoid paying the most interest.
You guys, there's probably lots of debt you look at. What's the most handicapping one? Is it?
I would say just I would call them silly credit cards that somebody has, and they use it for random things.
Mm.
And then eventually they've maxed out those cards and they don't realize. And now they're in a hole that they can't get out of. And so it ends up causing a lot of stress in relationships. Money arguments are probably the number one arguments in marriages. And so it is relieving when you can start to dig yourself out of those holes.
Mm-hmm.
And it provides a lot of hope for
Sure.
a lot of people.
What have you guys have probably saved marriages then, just by giving people a plan.
I hope so. Yeah. that's our hope, that we could teach people good financial habits that they could improve their own lives and pass along to their children.
Yeah. So they stack their debt, they pay it off, and then the next part is what?
Usually our advice to them is invest it.
Invest it.
Yeah. We usually deal with mutual funds, and so it's a good way to diversify your investments and get a really good rate of return.
Michelle, we throw that term out, mutual funds.
Yeah.
What's a mutual fund?
Okay. So think about if you were to have a 3-legged stool. Let's say you were invested in 3 different stocks yourself. If you kicked out one of those legs on that stool, what's happening to your stool?
You got 2 left.
Yeah, but you're probably going to fall over, right?
Yeah.
Right. So in a mutual fund, what happens is you're invested in a lot of different funds at once. And so let's say your chair now has 300 legs. You kick 1 or 2 legs out of that chair, you're still standing, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of a dumbified, I guess, explanation of a mutual fund where you're invested in several funds all at once.
So a mutual fund is going to be made up of a firm that's going to have a way of collecting a bunch of people's money and then investing it in a whole bunch of stocks.
Yes.
In a wide variety of stocks. They're not
Yes.
just going to be in energy.
No, it'll be in a lot.
Medical.
It's
going to be very diversified. And therefore the investor is protected, because instead of investing in all my money in Bitcoin,
yes, which I do not suggest,
or Amazon,
yeah,
or Sears,
right,
we're diversified over a wide range of things, and therefore our risk of losing our money is less,
right,
because we may lose here and lose here, but we're probably going to have
think
over the
about
long
it this
term.
way.
Mutual funds have done what? Do you have a number? I mean, I know they've done well, because that's what
9 to 12%.
9 to 12.
Yeah, since inception. So think about it this way: if you were invested in 2 companies that not kind of competitors, let's say you're in Coke and you're in Pepsi.
Okay.
If Coke goes under for some reason, what's going to happen to Pepsi's stock?
They're going to go up.
They're going to go up, right? And vice versa. When you're diversified like that in several different companies and things like that, you're going to typically, if you have them balanced like that, like Walmart and Target, you're honestly you're not. When we deal with people, we pay the money managers to do that stuff. We just pick the good funds that they're in. So
you just pass the money along.
Yeah. But that's a good way to think about it too, is when you're diversified like that. Because a lot of people, they're not educated on how the market works. And so they think, well, what if the market crashes and I lose all my money? So the market is continually going up. It's got dips, but it's continually going up. Yeah.
I asked, not because I didn't know, because
well, there's a lot of people that don't.
I kind of want to start a fund, because I see how strong and beneficial it can be, and actually like getting more people involved and dumbing it down, where if I'm on my own trying to invest, I don't know where to put my money. I may buy Bitcoin, it may tank tomorrow, and I'm nothing against Bitcoin. I'm not endorsing it or condoning it. I'm just using it as an illustration. But that fund, that we use the word mutual fund here, that fund allows people to invest safely. And so I just wanted to dumb it down, because we do throw it out there, but a lot of times it's kind of like the financial thing. People don't really know what a mutual fund is and how it works. So
that's why I like to use the chair analogy.
Yeah, that's good.
Or don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's another.
Yeah. Yeah. So people come to you, they've got all this debt. You guys stack their debt. You say, hey, if you'll live intentionally, if you'll skip the Starbucks coffee, Do you ever have to, you tell people that?
Yes.
'Cause it's $5, right?
Right.
And 5 days a week is $25.
Mm-hmm.
And over a year, it's $1,250.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, you can make it out of your own house for $50 a year, probably,
Right.
or something. I don't know. It's probably close.
It's a lot less. My husband, I'm very blessed that he grinds and does pour over coffees every morning. So it always smells delicious, and we save a lot of money that way.
Yeah.
But it's always better than the coffee shop too.
Yeah.
But
you love this because it's more than just a job.
mm-hmm.
There's a purpose behind it, and it's breaking chains.
Mm-hmm.
It's allowing people more mental space, more spiritual space,
Mm-hmm.
to do more. Because let's say I'm the guy with $80K debt. I'm in it for 120 years, 132 you said, I think. And now you give me freedom,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm out of that in 3.5 years. And 3.5 years later, I reinvested that money, and now I'm making up numbers here, but I've got $20,000 to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can do so much more with that now. Now, obviously, you guys probably want me to reinvest it, but I could pull it out and I could buy my mom a new car or something, right?
Right.
Or go on a mission trip or whatever. So that's cool.
Yeah.
What, Michelle, would you say is something that is a strong habit you have that sets you apart and makes you really good at what you're doing?
I think the little habits every day is usually the first thing that I do when I wake up. My eyes might not even be open, but my brain is awake. Is I spend time in prayer, thanking God for a new day, because we're not guaranteed the next day, right? But that's the very first thing I do is intentionally spend that time thanking God for this new day. Helping guide my direction this day and what he would have me do and who he would have me meet. But aside from that, little healthy habits, when you feel good in your body, it allows you to be that much better throughout the day.
Yeah.
When you're drinking your water, when you're moving your body, things like that, it makes you smile more and feel better. And when you smile, it's contagious. I actually just made a post before I came in here. It's like, you're never fully dressed without a smile. So go change somebody's life and smile today.
My wife and I last week were talking about this, and I think she said it. I don't know if I'm sure she didn't coin it. Maybe she did, but movement is medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And we often, especially as we get older, you see it in kids, they're moving all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a lot of times we get older, we get less and less mobile, and there's all kinds of effects of that. I think she was saying that the muscle tissue actually helps you boost your immunity and prevent you from getting sick. So it can actually be, like if you were older, it could actually be a way to prevent yourself and give yourself more life is by going to the gym and moving your body.
One of the classes that I teach at the Y is with a group of older ladies. They bring the brightness to my day, but it is very true. When they're moving their body, they feel a lot better. So a body in motion will stay at motion. A body at rest will stay at rest.
Yeah. You've done that for a long, long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of change have you seen in people mentally as they get into exercise?
When they're physically active?
Yes. Have you seen like people that are, in the slumps, and then they'll
So I'll use myself for example.
Okay.
So I, before we started our business a little over 2 years ago when we were working on opening our brokerage, I was very intentional with being physically active every single day. and drinking my water, eating the right foods, things like that. Well, in my mind, for some reason, I thought I would dive headfirst into business, and I let a lot of those habits go, and it took a mental toll on me. And then the beginning of this year was really 75 Hard was the kick in the seat that I needed to get those habits back into order. But yes, even starting from day one and being intentional with that time to be active and drink my water and things like that, it really makes a difference on your mental mood when you move your body.
Our family right now is into running, and there's a lot of days we don't want to. But there has never been a day that when we did it, we regretted it.
Nope, you'll never regret it.
You won't. You never do.
I say the hardest step is, especially when we were doing 75 Hard, 45 minutes every day is outside, no matter what the weather was.
Yeah.
We've had some gnarly weather at the beginning of the year, but the hardest step was to step outside.
Yep.
After that,
the commitment.
You're fine. Yep. You have to take that first step and actually commit and go for it. That could be said for a lot of different things in life.
Yes. Yeah. So that's good. So, and I didn't really exercise much for a long time. And I remember telling Ginger, like at night or in the morning, I would say, "Oh, I'm just getting so old," because my body ached.
Yes.
And it's been amazing, to echo your testimony. It's been amazing what moving my body has done for the aches and pains. Like, people think, well, you know, you're going to hurt yourself. But it's not that way. You take away those aches and pains, right? When you do that intentional thing. And I think you could say the same about the financial part, right? A lot of times we want to ignore our financial position. We don't even want to talk about it.
Right.
But when we do, it gives us freedom. And the discipline of grinding your own coffee or whatever, not buying that doodad, allows us so much more freedom to do more things, bigger things.
Have impact.
Yeah. Because we're not handicapped by. And I think that's part of the problem too. Part of a problem, I think, is everything is here now, self-gratification. And we can't wait anymore, right?
Yeah.
And that's what credit cards allow us to do, is I can have it right now. I don't have to put it on layaway. Right. I don't know. Is there even layaway programs anymore? I don't know.
I have no clue.
I think you just swipe the plastic and get it.
Yeah.
So you just finished 75 Hard? Like this week, 2 weeks ago?
It was Friday. Yes.
Friday. So the next step, are you doing the next step?
I haven't, but I'm keeping most of the habits. I won't do 2 workouts a day, but I'll at least do 1. I'll keep up with my water, keep self-developing, things like that. And I ended up picking no processed sugars as my diet for 75 Hard, and that made a huge difference. And you talking about your joints hurting and things like that, that's a huge difference. So definitely sticking with that.
That's good. What would be a pet peeve of yours? What would annoy you? And I'm specifically going to talk about the financial part. What, just like when you see people in that bondage, what annoys you? I mean, is it, you kind of mentioned earlier the school system. Is that part of it, or is it just people's lack of self-control? What really just like brings the out of the shell?
One thing that I don't understand is when I sit down with families, and one question that we ask is, how much do you think you blow on a weekly basis on non-essential items? That number is everywhere, and most of the time they're not entirely sure. But to me, I always wonder how people could let money walk out the door and not know where it's going. And so that's probably the most irritating thing when I sit down and talk to people about money.
And that's one problem with your credit card
Mm-hmm.
is you don't think about it.
Right. It's easy to swipe.
Or your Amazon.com and
Yeah.
it's already there and you just push check out. That's good. As we wrap this up, 2 questions. One question is, we mentioned earlier, you love to learn through Audible. Audible. That's what I do. Is that what you do is Audible?
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's been a whole new world. What is a top book that you would recommend for people, whether it's in finances or self-help or what would be?
So 2 books come to mind, really easy. Besides the Bible, you've got to stay in the Word. If you're not spiritually growing,
Correct.
We're all dying. Atomic Habits. I picked that up at the beginning of the year. There's some really good practical
nuggets in there.
Yes, nuggets that you could put in your life. And then also The Power of Consistency.
Okay.
And just really thinking outside the box. And that book goes a lot. I'm actually getting back into that book because it's been a couple years since I've read it. But
I read that one. I haven't read that one.
Oh, goodness. I can't remember names. Weldon Long.
Weldon Long.
Yep.
Okay.
Power of Consistency by Weldon Long. So he talks about, let's say, growing up, you were given ideals.
Mm-hmm.
You were given maybe the way people talk to you, how you saw life, and it was all put into a box. And let's see if I'm saying it right. He talks about trying to make a cake out of these ingredients in your box, but really what was in the box were parts to build a motorcycle. So you cannot create a cake out of motorcycle parts. But it talks about how do I get rid of that junk in my box, right, and create it with good things. And really, it's the power of thought, and it's the power of how am I thinking, and what is it leading to that I can create what I want out of life. He actually he was in prison, and he wasn't able to see his son, and he would write letters to him like all the time while he was in prison. But he ended up building a multi-billion company when he got out of prison because he found ways to learn and get ahead while he was in, I guess, rock bottom. Yeah. He learned how to get rid of the junk and rebuild where he wanted to. So that's a really powerful book.
I'm going to check it out. It's really powerful because I believe there's a book I read last year called Personality. Personality Isn't Permanent. Mm-hmm. But it's similar to that premise in the sense that a lot of times we put ourselves in a box and we say, I can't X, Y, Z. Mm-hmm. It's not who I am. But he makes a really strong point that we can do anything with enough time and enough energy.
Right.
So kind of even circling back to the finance thing, so many people I'm sure feel in bondage. They need to break these chains. Mm-hmm. You guys can teach them how, but it's that compound. It's that consistency. What's the name of it? Consistency is your book?
Power of Consistency.
The Power of Consistency.
Mm-hmm.
It's the power of that consistency. It's the power of paying down the debt, and then the power of investing the extra that blows it up. So those are good books. Sounds like a good book. I'm going to check it out. Next question, last question. You have 1 week to live. You're kind of like Jonah in Nineveh. Mm-hmm. And you have one message to share. What's your message to the world?
I would say love unconditionally. There are so many things that divide us as a people. And God put us all here to help each other out. And I think that help should be given freely. And that would be my message was love like Jesus loved, unconditionally.
That's so good. Have you read any of Bob Goff's books? Listen to him.
No.
Add Everybody Always to your...
Everybody Always?
Everybody Always. It's so good. It's all about that.
Okay.
Do you know who Bob Goff is?
I do not.
You will fall in love with him. I guarantee it. He's just this happy-go-lucky, just loves people like Jesus loves them. But it's a really good book. So, well, thank you, Michelle, for your time, and
thank you. It was an honor
for coming on and helping everybody be more intentional and do more with their life. So, hey, where can people find you as far as your organization, what you guys do?
Yes, you're welcome to reach out to me on social media, or I'll give out my phone number if you want. But we meet people one-on-one. We typically meet them on Zoom. But 405-473-4814. That's my plug.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you.